Okay. Good morning. As we go to the Chitas of today, holding the portion of Mekates, which is on chapter 41. Chapter 41, verse number 1. He came to the end of 2 years. Upari Chaylam and Pari Ham Pharaoh had a dream. And behold, he's standing at the edge of the Nile. Rashi says, Mekates, Colossian Kates is the end. Alayir, by the canal, no other rivers are called Yehudim except the Nile. Why? Because the entire land was covered by many man canals, like we have in Florida, man-made canals, and the Nile would rise, the Kochobi would rise, and it would go in the canals, and that was done to be able to water the water, because they didn't have rain in Egypt. Verse number 2, parts of the from the Nile came out 7 oxes. Yafis Malin, beautiful oxes. Brios, they were healthy. Basa with flesh, but and they were pasturing the mashla. Rashi says, Yafis Malis, this was a symbol for the days of plenty. When the creatures appear handsome to one another, and no one envies his fellow. Ba'achu, Rashi says in the marsh. Behold, 7 other cows are coming out after them. Minayur from the water, from the Nile. They were an ugly appearance. Medakis, they were extremely thin of flesh. But and they were stood beside the cows on the side of the Nile. Verse number 4, in the ugly cows, appearance of lean flesh, and devoured the 7 cows. They devoured the 7 cows, the handsome cows. Vayikatz Pare, and Pare woke. But what means they ate it up? So Rashi says this is a sign that the joy of the plenty will be forgotten during the times of famine. He fell asleep again, and he had the second dream. Behold, 7. Behold, 7 ear grains are growing out of one stalk. But he is tables that were healthy and good. And Rashi says, Bekana Echad is a stalk, but he is healthy. Behold, 7 grains of thin and beaten by the east wind are growing after them. Rashi says, burnt up, parched. Kadim Ruach Mizrachis, an east wind. Verse number 7, and the thin grains swallowed up the 7 healthy ones. They were full. And Pare woke up, and behold, he had a dream. Rashi says, this is healthy, number 1. Rashi says, and behold, the whole dream was complete before him. And it required interpretation. It was a dream that bothered him. And it came to pass in the morning, and the spirit was troubled. So he gathered together all the Khartoum, the necromancers of Egypt. They were the guys who, Rashi will say soon, they were the guys who used witchcraft. And all its wisdom people. And Pari told them the dream, and nobody could really give it interpretation. And Rashi says that the spirit was agitated, knocking him like a bell. 2 reasons for this agitation: forgetting the dream and the ignorance of its interpretation. Hatume, those that arouse themselves with bones of the dead. They'll be able to inquire of the bones. They used to talk to the dead people. The words tume, bones that are made. Any place that is about it, they would interpret them, but not for Pari. But their voice did not reach his ears. And he had no satisfaction from their interpretation. But they said, some of them said, you'll beget 7 daughters, and you'll marry 7 daughters. He was not interested in this thing. Pari actually felt it was more about Egypt than about him. They were all translating it about him. Suddenly the chief of the cupbearer, spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I called to mind my fault today. Paro had a dream. I'm sorry, Paro had got angry on the servants. And he put us into the prison. They put the chief slaughterer of the house that the animals and the one that the baker. And we had a dream the same night. Anivahu, him and me. Each one according to the interpretation of his dream we had dreamt. What does that mean? She says a dream fit for the interpretation that was interpreted to us and similar, meaning a dream for which the interpretation given was appropriate and which was similar to that interpretation. Shamitan, not every DVD, and with us was this Hebrew lad, Salabadog Tabachim, who was a chief, was a slave to the sheep slaughterer. And we told him the dream. And he interpreted our dreams. He interpreted according to his dream. Now she says, Nar Ivri Eved, cursed are the wicked, for their favors are incomplete. He mentioned him in an expression of contempt. Nar, he called Yosef a Nar, a fool, unfit for high position. Ivri doesn't even understand our language. He talks a different language. Eved, he's a slave. In the laws of Egypt, it's written a slave may neither reign nor wear princely garments. So he was worried that Yosef would receive some kind of honor. So he made sure to tell the Pharaoh he's no fit for anything. According to the dream and closely. Exactly the way he interpreted, that's what happened. I was restored to my position, but he says, Salah, and you hanged the other guy. Rashi says he refers to Pharaoh, mentioned above. He says Pharaoh was angry with his servants. Hence the verse says it did not specify who restored, because it's not necessary to specify who restored. Or it can only be the one who's had the power to restore. Namely the Pharaoh. So here it was like, making sure to butter up the Pharaoh. This customary for all verses, concerning which one who does to do the thing they leave in a manner unspecified. Somebody sent by Yikras Yosef, and they called Yosef by Yitzum and Aber, and they pulled him out of the pit. They galach, and they gave him a good. They gave him a haircut. By Yachlas some Yosef, and they changed his garments. By Yavil Apare, and they brought him to the Pharaoh. Now she says, Mina buried from the pit, from the prison, was made like a sort of a pit. So every instance, the pit, means even where there's no water, it's called a bird. So this, as I said, the Egyptian prison was a terrible place to be. It was a pit. And that completes the Chumash for today. We got to go now to the Tanya today. We're holding the second chapter of Tanya. Chapter 2. Nefesh Hashenis Israel. After that, it says the second soul of every Jew, he's a part of God, mamish. Truly, mamish. This is the word mamish, as it says over here in the pasuk. It says he's a part of God of above. The Alter Rebbe adds the word mamish. Mamish means truly. To separate the literal meaning of these words. Whereas no, some verses employ some kind of a language that is not real, so to say. It's just an analogy. For example, the verse describing the great and fortified city is reaching up to the heavens. Clearly meant to be, not to reach up. No walls reach up to heavens. In order, we should not interpret the phrase a part of God above in a similar manner. Alter Rebbe puts the word mamish, truly, to emphasize that it's mamish, it's real, it's part of God. Alter Rebbe writes, as it's written in the Torah, when God created Adam, it says, and he blew in his nostrils a soul of life. So he blew in his nostrils, an interesting expression by Yipach. And we have the same expression, another verse, it says, Va'ata nafachta bi. And we say in our praise, concerning the soul every day, we say, you blew it within me. The significance of the verb blow, as it relates to the infusion of the Jewish soul explained above. Concept of the blow. We realize when we cough, take strong breaths, we lose our payach, because it comes from the essence. It comes from the essence. Take a deep breath. Because of Zaya, as written the Zaya explains, man did nafach, when one blows, he blows from within him. Pirush, is from the inwards and his innermost being. For the innermost, for the inward and innermost vitality of man amidst through blowing with force. As I said, blowing hires a person much more quickly than speaking, as readily observed, for it requires greater exertion and effort and vitality. Hence the fact, the metaphor of blowing is used to describe God's implanting the Jewish soul in his body. Signifies that the soul originates from the innermost aspect of God. That's why with God. That's why it says a difference. It says the Abishta created the world by Sodom and mothers. God created the world with 10 utterances. Over here, the pasuk uses Vayipach. A Jew is rooted in innermost God's innermost and essential being. It's indicated further by the designation of the Jewish people as God's children, whose soul originates in his thought, just like a child stems from the father's brain, as the Alter Rebbe explained. So the world was created, as I said, through speech, and a godly soul, the soul of a human being, was created through God's thought. And as we're going to explain in Tanya, in a very rational way, what's in a logical way, the difference between speech and thought. So to an example, soul of a Jew, all of the machshava, so to say, came about in God's thought. So the Jew has a source in the thought, divine thought, the innermost level of godliness. All other created beings, even angels, are rooted and created by divine speech. Speech is external and thought is internal. So here we already introduced the concept of chitzonius and pnimius. Chitzonius is an outer expression. I speak for somebody else. I think for myself. As is written, Israel is my firstborn. Born, and says another verse, bornim atem Hashem alekech. So it says for each and every Jew is a child of God. What is the meaning that we are children of God? What does that mean? Nice word. The pasuk is not looking for a banner. The pasuk is telling us something that is reality. We are children of God. What does that mean? This is the saying, significance of a Jew being called child of God. Just like a child is derived from the father's brain. Everything starts off with the brain. And in the father's brain, father, God forbid, was brain dead. He wouldn't be able to have a child. Everything starts with the father's brain. And it started off in his chachma. And from the father's brain, now we have the situation where we can have, ultimately, the creation of a child with the mother. But it needs to start off in the father's brain. because he's the one that gives to the mother what the mother needs to develop. But first, the father needs to have that machachma, needs to have that wisdom. So to the soul of every Jew, so that's what the pasuk wants to tell you. When it says you're the children of God, he wants to tell you you're a child. You're not like anything else in the world. You are a child that comes from God's wisdom. What does it mean from God's wisdom? Okay, so if you say from God's wisdom, then the Alter Rebbe now takes this concept a step further, deriving that from thought and wisdom actually implies that it derives from God himself. The Alter Rebbe says you cannot separate God from his wisdom. And that we know has to do with a general concept. It's a general concept, as the Rambam, Alter brings from the Rambam. By a human being, you can separate the person from his wisdom. But by God, it's all one. Him and his wisdom is one. That's why God and humanity is one, and God and the Torah is one. Because the Torah comes from God's wisdom, and a godly soul comes from God's wisdom. And therefore, both the soul and both the Torah come from the essence of God. Why? Because God and his wisdom is one. As he says, for he is wise, God possesses the quality wisdom, but not like with the wisdom that is known to us created beings, where we understand the concept of wisdom. Because him and his wisdom are one. He and his wisdom is one. As the Rambam writes, the Rambam explains it this following way. He is the knowledge, and he simultaneously is the knower. He knows and comprehends through the knowledge, and he is that which is known. God is also the subject of knowledge and comprehension, as my money concludes. It's all one thing. You can't separate by God the knower from the knowledge. This means that God's wisdom and comprehension are totally different from man's. In a human being's comprehension, there are three separate, distinct components: the person soul, the knower, and the possessor of knowledge. Number two, the power of intellect and comprehension, which is called the knowledge, by which the person knows, his brain, his knowledge capability. And then there is the knowledge, the known. So there's the knower, there's knowledge, and there is the known, such as the law of the Mishnah or discussion of the Gemara, which is apprehended and known. So by a human being, there is him, there is his knowledge, and there is what he learns. Three different components, three different realities, and they ultimately sometimes come together, sometimes not. He learns a Gemara, he learns something, he doesn't get the knowledge, he doesn't get it. He gets it. It has nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with him. He does the knower and is not affected by it. So you can have three different components, and that's three different realities, and they come in three different times. The Rambam writes that God is the same thing, it's one aspect. Certainly God's wisdom, in Maimonides states, he is the knowledge, the knower, and the known. Because who created the knowledge? So any knowledge that's in the world is all from God. He created that knowledge. He created wisdom. God, in the means of a comparison, the knowledge, and at the same time, he is who understands, the knower. And at the same time, which is understood, the known. So God is the knowledge, the knower, and the known. All at once. And the Rambam himself writes, what I say, what God is, it's almost impossible to understand that. Because we cannot comprehend that you can be the all one essence, we can be one entity. There are three different realities. And by God is one. And now, in general, because it's important, because of that in Chassidus, in Kabbalah, in Torah, mentions many times that Hu Chachmas Yechad. Very important concept, because that explains the whole Torah. The whole Torah is God. Because if you're going to say, oh, the Torah is the wisdom of God, but God and his wisdom is one. So if you're going to say, like a human being, his wisdom and him are two different things, then Chas v'Shalom, we say, by God, there's God and there's his wisdom. No, that's why, as a Jew, if you understand what God is, then you cannot put compartments in God. That's why the same thing we say also by everything, not only by his wisdom is one, but God is one with his midas. There's no concept of separation by God. There's no concept by God to make distinctions. Because that's a human concept, distinctions and different compartments and different realities. By God, it's all one. As it says, can you find and understand God by searching? Are you going to be able to comprehend God? It's impossible to comprehend God, because comprehension itself means you're putting something into a box. So to comprehend something means that I take something separated from everything else, and I put it in a certain misgeret, in a certain kind of understanding. You cannot do that to God. Uksiv, as it says, my thought is not your thought. Meaning, says God, consequently, your and me thought cannot possibly become my thought. It's impossible. Because your thought, I created your thought. I created your thought, Baruch Hashem, that you have the capability. Imagine if you had a thought, like some people, that their thoughts go wild. They can't contain it. I have a nervous breakdown. You need to be able to contain your thoughts. You need to be able to compile your thoughts into different categories, into different realities. But that's not my thought. You cannot take your thought and understand my thought. It's impossible. And that's why it's impossible ultimately to understand God. Since his wisdom is one with himself, and as it's shown, it follows, as it's been shown, it follows that the Jewish soul, which stems from divine wisdom, is actually derived from God himself. Many Jewish philosophers that he writes over here reject Maimonides' descriptions as God as the knowledge, the knower, and the know. In fact, they consider it erroneous to describe God as a description of any sort. Even at lofty levels of intellect, which Maimonides writes, in so much as a description implies limitation, and God is inherently limitless. So even they argue with the Rambam in putting God as in these three things, and they come together as one. Alter Rebbe therefore points out in this note that Kabbalists agree with the Rambam, with the qualification of this concept does not apply to God's essence. For his essence is truly infinite, even higher than inscrutable levels of knowledge that the Rambam refers to. English's wisdom. Not to say God has wisdom already is already a limitation. Regarding his essence, those who disagree with the Rambam are correct in maintaining that God cannot be defined in terms of knowledge, since he transcends it infinitely. Only after God limits the infinite light of his essence to the process of tzimtzum. But that's why you can first come in Atzilus, the world of emanation, and say this Chachma d'Atzilus. We can only describe the wisdom of the world of Atzilus. We can't go higher. Higher than that is undescribable. Thereby assuming the attribute of Chachma. Only then can we say God, he is the knowledge, the knower, and the known. So the Alter Rebbe that says those who argue with the Rambam didn't comprehend that the Rambam not talking about the essence of God. The Rambam's talking the way God comes into a situation of achat tzimtzum after the contraction of God. where the, so to say, comes to the four worlds, where we start to express the wisdom of God, the love of God, etc., etc. But everybody agrees, that Rambam also agrees, that to the essence of God, there's no comprehension. You cannot put into God even into the concept of wisdom. You cannot give 10 attributes to God. No concept. Right? This is the note, so to say. The Kabbalists have agreed to him that God can be described as a knower, the known, and the knowledge, as stated in Pardes Haramak. The Rabbi Kabbalah Sarizal. According to the Kabbalah of Zarizal, the Chayla Levracha, as a blessed memory, my modern statement stands. Kabbalah Zarizal provides an even deeper insight into the limitless of God's essence, higher even the level of knowledge to which Mani refers. Still, even according to that teaching, Zarizal, my Mani statement is acceptable with one provision, however. This only applies to the mystical principle of the enclosing of the Ein Sof by means of numerous contractions, tzimtzumim. And that's when we come to the vessels of the spheres of Chabad. Chabad is the acronym of Chachma Bina Das. Effectively, the trident of spheres, which represents the divine intellect in the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation Atzilus. So here we have the first world. After that, introduce us to the first world of Atzilus. With there, we have the concept of the S, that Arizal says, you have the concept of the S spheres and 10 manifestations. So through the process of supplementation, called tzimtzum, contraction, God manifests, or in Kabbalistic terminology, clothes himself, his infinite essence, referred to Kabbalah as Ein Sof, the endless, infinite one, in the spheres, which are his attributes. This manifestation occurs first in Atzilus, in the world of emanation, specifically Chabad of Atzilus, divine intellect. Thus, at the level of Atzilus, God can indeed be defined in my Maimonides terms, the knower and the known and the knowledge. So in the world of Atzilus is the world of oneness. So we cannot even understand the world of Atzilus. Forget about higher than Atzilus, the essence of God. But what the Torah is saying, that even in the world of Atzilus, it's hard to comprehend. Even in the world of Atzilus, where there is wisdom, because it's after the tzimtzum, it's after contraction, where God comes into wisdom. Over there, it's one. But in the higher in the world of Atzilus, forget it. Above the world of Atzilus, the unknowable God cannot be defined. Accordingly, in terms of the Kabbalistic scale, Maimonides has nothing to say about God except in the world of Atzilus and down. Maimonides is talking from the world of Atzilus and lower, not above that. As explained elsewhere, that the Ein Sof, which we call Ein Sof Baruch Hu, infinity, is infinitely exalted over and transcends it goes beyond the level of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. The Eibishter itself is not wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. God is infinite. You cannot put any kind of name to him. You cannot say anything about him. I don't know. That's the question. What is God? I don't know. Anything you say, I know, then you're limiting God. In fact, the level of Chabad, of Atzilus, is like an infer as material action of relation to God. To God, Atzilus is like the world. It's the same thing. It's like the physical world. Because God is infinite, and Atzilus of the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, is finite to God. It might be infinite to us, but to God it's finite. So everything is relative. As it says, you made everything with wisdom. You have conceived them all with wisdom. Would it be more appropriate conceiving, not making? It's surely proper to function to God's wisdom. You have made them all with wisdom. Indicates that to God, wisdom, the highest level within the world, is as lowly as a sea at the lowest level. A seesaw. By God, wisdom is action. In comparison to God's essence, wisdom So in comparison to us, even our wisdom is not action. Our wisdom is spiritual in comparison to action. But to God, asisa. By you, chachma is like an action. Because the second you say word chachma, wisdom, you have now put a word to God. You can't do that. So in essence, they're both are right. The Rambam says they're both are right. Those that in Kabbalah are right. To God, you can't put a name. And the Rambam's talking about if the contractions of God, which brought God into the world of emanation, which created the concept of Esses Sfiras, the 10 manifestation of God. But even in the world of Atzilus, in the world of emanation, there it's all one. And that's why we don't even understand the world of Atzilus, very deep world. After Rebbe now addresses the difficulty arising in the previous statement, that every soul emanates from divine wisdom. Since all souls emanate from the one source, the supernal wisdom, it shall follow that all souls are the same level and rank. How then do we have various levels of ranks found in the Jewish souls that come down? How do we have different levels of souls? We all come from the wisdom of God. The Alter Rebbe continues, there are myriads of different gradations of souls. Rank upon rank, infinitely. For example, the souls of the patriarchs, Moshe Rabbeinu, the soul of Moses, a blessed memory. The souls of the patriarchs, the souls of Moshe Rabbeinu, in comparison to our souls, the souls of this generation of before the coming of Mashiach. Why are we called Ikvis and Mashiach? Why are we called the heels, the footsteps of Mashiach? Because our souls are like heels in comparison to the head. So we all know that there's a great difference between the brain in our head to the heel that's on our foot. We deal differently with it. We don't walk on our head, we walk on our feet. And just as life was found in the soles of the feet cannot possibly be compared to found in the head and the brain, so too there's no comparison. The souls that presented in the generation of those souls that are called head and brain of early generations. The early generations were much higher, greater souls in comparison to our souls. And so too in every generation. In every generation, we find different levels of souls. We have those that are heads and leaders of the multitude of Yidden. We have tzaddikim. We have great rabbis, great teachers. That their souls are in the category of a head. In comparison to the souls of the masses. And those that are ignorant. And similarly, the levels of souls can call nefesh. You should know that there are 5 levels of the soul. Right? Kabbalah tells you the 5 levels of the soul. And the 3 basic levels of the soul is nefesh, ruach, neshama. Every soul, every one of us have the basics. Nefesh, ruach, neshama. Nefesh. Just as the soul level, neshama, varies in every Jew, so to the levels of ruach and the nefesh. Right? So the neshama is an intellectual part of the soul. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different level of capacity of intellect. So to the ruach, the love and fear of the neshama, has different levels. And so too, ultimately, the way the nefesh, the way it comes down into a physical reality, is different. Thus, we see manfold are the different ranks of souls. Accordingly, we would expect similar variation in the divine source. The greater the soul, the higher the source. You might think that maybe we all come from a different source. Since we have different levels of the soul, maybe we have different sources. But therefore, we should all realize that the source of every soul, from Moshe Rabbeinu until me, I'm a little bit goof that come into the bodies of simple folks and most religiously irreverent people. So they might have a very low voltage soul to Moshe Rabbeinu, who had a high voltage soul. But the source comes from the same place. And all souls come from the same source. And what is the source? Chachma of the Yebishter. Comes from the supernal mind, which is the supernal wisdom. So that in order to help us understand why the levels of the individual soul vary so widely, despite the common source. The Rebbe now turns to an analogy of a father and a son, used earlier to illustrate the description of a Jew as a God of God's children, who derive from the wisdom of God. As explained briefly, in this analogy, the entire body is derived from the drop of semen, originated in the father's brain. Yet many physical components which constitute the child's body are by no means uniform. They vary greatly from the brain, the highest component, to the nail of the feet, the lowest. And that's when we cut our nails. The radical difference comes about through the presence of the dot of semen in the mother's womb during the 9 months of gestation. It is a period of physical development that produces a difference between one organ and the other. The more materialized a particular component of the drop becomes, the more it diverges from its original state and becomes an entity on its own, unique physical characters. We thus observe that though all organs share a common source, nevertheless, in the process of development, there rises differences radical between the brain and the nails. Another matter evident in the analogy, through the nails are the most insignificant part of the child's body, they're still bound and united with their first source, which is the father's brain. But like the other parts of the child's body, the nail too perceive the nourishment, the life in its brain. Since a child's brain retains the essence of its source, the father's brain, and thus constantly bound with its source, even the nails are therefore bound with its original source. Same is regarding with the soul. All souls are derived from the same source and root, from the wisdom, Chachmei law, wisdom of God. The soul must descend therefore through multitude of worlds and levels before clothing itself in the physical body. It's this descent that creates the changes of the soul's level and the difference between one soul and another. For one soul is affected by this descent to a greater degree than another. Second aspect of analogy applies here. Although the soul may descend to the very lowest of levels, it's still bound and unified with the original source, Chachmei. In this analogy, the nail remains bound to the father's brain, though their unity with the soul of the son's brain. Similarly, these souls of the lowest level remain bound with the source of Chachmei law through the attachment to the souls of the righteous and the sages of the generation, from whom they receive their spiritual nourishment. Even when this physical world, souls of higher levels, analogy to the child's brain, retain their spiritual level and their source, the level of the head and brain. Even though these souls, even the souls of lower levels, remain bound and unified with their source within God. This is briefly what the Alter Rebbe goes on to say. Just like the man of the son that comes from the brain of the father, that even the nails come from this drop, really, which comes from the father's brain. How then are the nails created? By being in the mother's womb for 9 months. The mother has the capability to take this drop and bring it from level to level until the nails are formed, Baruch Hashem. Though the child's organs all derive from the same source, the drop of semen, which comes from the father's brain, yet they develop into entities as radical, diverse as the brain and the nails. The im calls that, nevertheless, although the drop has been altered as to become substance of the child's nails, it's still bound and united with the wondrous of mighty unity, with its original essence and being, namely the drop of semen that it came from the Father's brain. And even after the son is born, the nails receive their nourishment from his brain, which comes from the Father's brain. The nails derive their life force from the brain, which in turn retains the substance and the source, the brain of the Father. Thus, the nails are two bound up through the brain of the Son with the Father's brain. Evidence now brought that the nails remain bound to the Father's brain. Here's the Gemara. The Gemara writes, from the white of the Father's drop, Stephen, are formed the veins, the bones, and the nails of the child. According to Kabbalah, too, there is a connection between the nails and the brains, as it says in Kabbalah, not only Gemara, but in Kabbalah. As it's written in Eitz Chaim in the Statara principles of the garments of Yaakov, of garments of Adam, the same levush shalom adishim v'ganei. It says that Adam and Ishan was made of nails. His body was covered like nails, like a kosher fish. He has scales. So his body, it's brought down in the beginning before he sinned. His body was covered like with nails. The chizmei of tfuna, and Kabbalah said it means from the faculty of the brain. His brain was connected to his body, and that's why he was covered, so to say, with nails. Then he sinned, and now he has separation of brain and his emotions, and now that's why that we have what we have right now, flesh, which we cannot see. So before he sinned, he had like nails, so he actually, like a nail, you could see through. The neshama shone through his body. Then he became like body. Now the soul is hidden in the body. We got flesh. The flesh covers. That's the first garment that God created. The body itself became a garment to the soul. So then his nails, today we cut off our nails. The beginning of creation, his nails covered his entire body, which Kabbalah explains that his soul shone through his body. Now we're left with nails at the end of the body, end of our hands, and the end of our feet. Exactly so is the case regarding every nefesh, shluch neshama of the community of Israel. So too is changed from its original state, the process, development. Similarly, the gestation, which transforms a semen, drop of semen. The case of souls, however, this process consists of descent from world to world. So the journey of the soul, that it comes from the world of Atzilus, and it ultimately goes from one level to another level, is like the birth of a child, creation of a child in his mother's stomach. We consider the concept of Golus also like this concept of the birth of a child. The Rebbe now goes on to state the details of the descent. Specifically, the soul passes through the four spiritual worlds in its descent from the supernal wisdom to the human body. The worlds or stages of the creative process are descent order: Atzilus, the world of emanation; Bria, the world of creation; Yetzira, the world of formation; Asiya, the world of action. It's written in the words of Abiyah. Abiyah. Abiyah is the four letters, the acronym of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Abiyah. That's the four letters. In English, you have it over here, Abiyah. Function of the significance of these worlds will be clarified further in Tanya. For the moment, a brief explanation will be suffice. Atzilus is the world of emanation, it's a world where Ein Sof life radiates. So that Atzilus is in effect a godliness itself transplanted, so to speak, to a lower level. This takes place by the means of tzimtzum. For this reason, Atzilus is still united with its source. And over there, it's in oneness of God. These two characteristics of Atzilus are indicated in the very name. The word Atzilus has rooted in two roots. The verb itself, which means to delegate. I shall delegate something to you, Moshe, the spirit to place upon you. The verse is saying then that the spirit of prophecy, possessed by the 70 elders, were merely an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu's spirit, not something new and separate from him. Similarly, the properties of the world of emanation are extension on a lower level of insight, infinite. B, Atzilus means to be near, Eitzel. So Otzel and Eitzel, thus indicating that the unity of Atzilus is with its source. The world of Bria, the world of creation, as implies, is a creation, not divinity itself. It's the first creation to come into a manner of Yesh Mi'ayin, creating ex nihilo, from ayin, nothingness. Yesh, something from nothing. It comes about a yesh, a defined state of existence. Bria, however, represents merely the passage of our non-existence. It's a state of creation which cannot yet be spoken or given the proper existence, definable in terms of form and structure. That's why it's a world of intellect. It has no structure yet. Yitzira, formation, is the world in which created ayin assumes a shape and form. And that's why it's the world of emotions. And then you have the world of action, refers to a complete creation. Understandably, this complete creation is still spiritual. The world of Asiya is not this world yet. The world is still a spiritual world. Final world of creation, comprised of our physical world, with all its creatures, comes into being only in a later stage. So you have the four worlds, spiritual worlds, and then you ultimately have the physical world. Together, these worlds form the Sefer is formed the Seder Hishtalshlus, a chain-like order descent. You should remember these words. Seder Hishtalshlus. Seder means an order. Hishtalshlus means descent, a chain-like order descent. So it is designated because just as the lower link of chain is connected to the higher by means of all the interlocking links. Similarly, the Seder Hishtalshlus, the lower level of Asiya is connected to the higher level of Atzilus. All the levels interlocked and flow for one each other. That's Seder Hishtalshlus. In the course of this descent, Chachmila, the supernal wisdom, the highest level of Chachma in the world of Atzilus, to the physical body, soul passes through the entire Seder Hishtalshlus. And as I stated earlier, this descent produces the various levels of the soul. As the soul comes from Atzilus, it gets more definitions. And the question is, ultimately, as it comes into my body, what is the definitions that is important, that will shine within me? Which part of those definitions? It's a complex issue. But ultimately, everybody has to find what is the thing that turns him on, so to say. What is the things that connects? What is the definitions that make sense to him? Is he more chesed? Is he more gevura? Is he more wisdom? What is those definitions? Because those definitions, as his soul comes from level to level, is going to be defined ultimately into who he is. It doesn't make a difference ultimately, all his definitions, because in his essence, he's a part of God. And that's the essence of everything. So this descent produces various levels of the soul, just as the gestation causes a drop of semen to be transformed into a child's body, even to the point where it forms its nails. After this deduction, let's turn to the Alter Rebbe's words. The soul descends by degree through the Hishtalshlus through this ishtalshlus, the chain like the descent. Ha'ilas are from the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. In the world of Atzilus, to the world of Bria, to the world of Yitzira, and to the world of Asiya. Chachmasi is but from the wisdom of God. As it says, everything was created with wisdom. Everything emanates from wisdom. Ultimately came down to the nefesh, ruach, and the neshama, and even simple folks, people like me. The souls mostly strongly affected by this ascent, and therefore they are in the lower level. Similarly, like with nails. Similarly, all the various levels. That's what we call ikvah, if you like the feet. Various levels of higher and lower souls are determined by the soul's ascent through Ishalshus. Some souls are affected to a greater degree, others less. The Rebbe now relates the second point of the analogy to our case. Thus, as an analogy, the nails of the child are still bound in the first source through the being constantly nurtured by the child's brain, so too in the case of the soul. It's still nevertheless, notwithstanding the fact that I are already become souls of a lower level, the souls of all simple folk and common people, that are these lesser souls, remain bond and united with a powerful and mighty unity with the original essence, namely the extension of wisdom, supernal wisdom. So we are still connected to supernal wisdom. In Nikas v'chayis nefesh neshama shalam yadis, because ultimately the nurture of this life force of the nefesh ruach and neshama of even simple folk are drawn through the nefesh ruach and neshama of the righteous sages, of the heads of Israel and of the generations. So by drawing the nurture of the life force of those who represent the heads and the brains of all Jews, are bound with the source of the Chachmei law and the supernal wisdom. So we have the capability right now, even though we might be low souls, to connect ourselves to a higher soul, which will give us a greater connection to our source. And that's why we should always be connected to a tzaddik. And you'll understand this. What our sages say, it says you should cleave to him. How do you cleave to God? The Gemara answers, whoever cleaves to a Torah scholar, the pasuk compares as easier to cleave to the Shekhinah itself, to God. Because since he is the head, he is a head in comparison to me, who's a foot. So therefore, if I cleave to a tzaddik, to a chacham, then I have the capability to have a greater connection. Right now in this world, even though my soul is such a low soul, but since I'm gonna cleave to the wisdom of that soul, so now my soul is gonna have a greater wisdom. Through attachment to a scholar, there's a connection. It's bound up with, united with its original essence, the root of supernal wisdom. So that's why, even though my soul is connected to the essence, but I'm so far away from my essence. How can a soul like me, who's so far away from his essence, have a feeling of essence in this present time? That's why I connect myself to the Alter Rebbe. I'm learning Tanya. Connect myself to the wisdom of the Alter Rebbe. And that connects me to a higher wisdom. That gives me the capability to connect to the source of wisdom. I'm not going to try to connect through my wisdom. My wisdom is very low. Because my soul is has come down extremely low. So if I'm going to try to connect through my wisdom, I'm going to connect to my wisdom of my soul, which is very low. I need to connect to a higher wisdom. I need to connect to a wisdom that's right now in the world, the wisdom of a tzaddik, which we're doing right now. We're connecting to where we are getting bonded with the wisdom of the Alter Rebbe, which the Alter Rebbe's wisdom was much greater. And that gives me in this world a greater wisdom. So the Alter Rebbe asked the question, what do we do with Jews who don't want to connect to the wisdom? What do we do with all Jews that don't want to connect to a tzaddik, don't want to connect to a Talmid Chacham? They don't want to learn. So where does their soul connect? Those who willfully sin and rebel against Torah stages, how do they receive their spiritual nature in life? Spiritual life and nature flows when there's a desire to mature and give life. The Alter Rebbe says, don't worry. Since a tzaddik always wants to give wisdom, that's his love. He loves the Yidden. So he gives everybody. He gives everybody. He's like, he learns from God. God gives everybody. The tzaddik gives everybody, whether you want it, whether you don't want it, whether you want his love, whether you want his wisdom, whether you don't want it, he gives. And therefore, their neshama will receive it subconsciously. Nefesh and neshama of scholars. And they receive this love. They receive this wisdom. So it's the hindsight, the backside. Nurture from the hind part can be understood by ways of comparison of one who gives an object to his enemy, obviously not out of true desire to give, but rather due to some external factor. The grudging reluctance in which he gives and reflected in his manner. He will turn away from him, tossing his object to his enemy over his shoulder. Same is true in the spiritual fear. When spirituality nurtured is giving unwillingly, it's described as coming from the hinder part of the giver, an external level of nurture. Nevertheless, even those who rebel against stages, we receive some measure of spiritual nourishment from them. And therefore, every soul without expectation, exceptions, must be bound up with its root and source, as explained earlier. The level nurtured they receive, however, is the hinder part of the soul of the sages. Having concluded, every Jew has a holy soul, which emanates from above, the supernal wisdom. Alter Rebbe now states, even the quality and rank and level of each individual soul is determined only by factors from above, spiritual factors, such as the soul above mentioned descend through Hishtalshlus. No action in this physical world can determine the quality and rank. This is an important concept. So therefore, your soul, whatever level it came to, is pure as in its source. Alter Rebbe makes the statement indirectly by clarifying the quotation of the Zohar, which seems to indicate the contrary. That's what's written in the Zohar. The Zohar says something that really, it's the soul that comes down into a body is all dependent on what the parents had at the time of conception. So what was the parents thinking at the time of conception? Were they thinking holy things, godly things? Were they thinking mundane, physical things? So you have children that were created from parents who were thinking who knows what we call simple folks. Simple folks, as the Zohar goes to imply, drawing down a child soul of a lower level, which seems to indicate that the action occurred in a physical world can in fact affect the soul's level. That's a problem. Contradicts everything I'm telling you right now. So it seems like what the parents thought at the time of conception That's what the soul is going to be. That means that their physical action has an effect on the soul. The Rebbe just says that's not the meaning. The Zohar is not referring to the soul at all, but the soul's spiritual garments. Because no nefesh ruch neshama is without a garment which stems from the nefesh of its father and its mother's essence. There are three shutfim in every person: his father, his mother, and God. What does the father and mother give him? They give him the physical side of him. Not only do they give him the physical side of him, they give him the levushim, the garments of the soul, the character that the soul is going to come into. And now the soul comes into this garment. So in essence, if a parent have not good thoughts in time of conception, they gave this poor soul garments that now the soul has it's difficult to deal with. Doesn't mean the soul cannot overcome it. But the soul, we gave the garments, we gave unholy garments. The parents might give unholy garments to the soul. And now all the commandments that this child's going to do, they all come through that garment, that character of the child, that garment, the psyche of the child. So it's through this garment that the soul achieves and its ability to affect the body and to perform the commandments involving physical matters. And even the benevolence that flows to one in heaven, from heaven, is all given through those garments. So because the soul is so strongly bound up with its garments, the Zohar refers to the garments in the context of as that personal soul. If you will sanctify, parents will sanctify themselves, they'll bring forth holy garments of the neshama of the child, thereby enabling the child to serve God more readily. That's why it says, it's brought down, the relationship, shouldn't be done in anger and drunkenness, in many different things, in simple halacha. It needs to be done in purity, in love, in deep communication. Therefore, feeling neshama gedayla, thereby even if this neshama is a great soul, which God gives a soul, nevertheless, the soul needs to have that the parents sanctify them, to make sure that this great lofty soul has great garments. But the neshama itself, you saw throughout history that some great souls come from people that are not so great. Not all great souls come from great people. You have great sages, Maya Avtalion, Rabbi Akiva, so on and so forth. Why? Because the neshama comes from God. And the neshama is given to, even David HaMelech, the Goyim liked the expression, David HaMelech said, I come from sin. And he had great parents, but we know David HaMelech, the story that his parents didn't want to have him. But that's what he said. My parents didn't have the right thoughts in the time of conception. But still, I'm David HaMelech. That's what he says, the expression, he's saying, I can have a situation my parents have left me, so to say, but it doesn't make a difference. The one who gave me my soul is God. And I have the capability, since I have such a godly soul, I have the capability of overcoming all garments. So it doesn't make a difference ultimately. That's what the Alter Rebbe wants. He might say, oh, I was born in a certain situation. I was born for certain parents. I'm in a certain environment. What do you want from me? I was born, I didn't ask to be born in this family. I didn't ask to be born in this environment. I didn't ask to be born in a situation that, so then you cannot blame me. I'm given garments that I cannot handle, or that I cannot, you can expect me to do something different. But therefore, the Torah tells us, therefore, Alter Rebbe tells you, no, you were given a soul by God. And how do you know what level soul you have? You want to tell me what kind of garment you have? We can argue. But how do you know the level of your soul? Who knows the level of their soul? Nobody. Every one of us can be walking around with a soul that can transform the world. Every one of us can be walking on a soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. How do you know? How do you know? You cannot answer, I know, because this is the family I was born in. This is the environment I was born in. This is the education What does that prove? Nothing. That proves the levushim you have. You can have a soul that can transform your levushim, transforms your garments, and change the world. You can become the Moshe Rabbeinu Jereh. How do you know? Who can tell anybody? You don't have the soul that can be the Moshe Rabbeinu of the next generation. Nobody can say. Nobody knows the only one who knows the soul that you have is God. And therefore, don't put yourself down and don't put anybody else down. Because nobody knows what somebody else's soul is. And nobody knows. Nobody doesn't even know what his soul level of soul is. As explained by the Arizal, the blessed memory, and the Kuti Teda, Parshas Vayera, with time and mitzvahs, Parshas Bereshis. Thus, physical world, parents apart, and no way affect the soul's spiritual rank. That's it. Nothing physical can affect the soul. Even the statement of Zayed that says the essential factor regarding the state of the soul in the holy manner conducted in your sexual reunion, that does not talk about the soul. That has nothing to do with the soul. That has to do with the soul's garment, self-understood. If you're going to be brought up in a house of Ganavim, it's going to be very hard not to be a Ganav. It's a Rachmanis, but that doesn't mean that you cannot overcome it. Doesn't mean that you cannot change it. The soul itself, in all its various levels, emanates from above, comes from God. And even if it's a low soul, still connected to God. And how do you know what soul you have? Therefore, everybody has to feel, that's why we're going to the beginning of Tanya. Everybody, Bashpiti Tzaddik. Every soul, be a Tzaddik. Maybe you have a soul of Tzaddik. And you're diminishing the value of your soul. And that completes the Tanya of today. A very important Tanya, the second chapter is extremely important. Tanya, it actually makes the foundation of the whole Tanya. Because the whole Tanya is based on the concept of the soul and the journey of the soul. So we first have to establish what kind of soul, what is the meaning of the soul? What is the meaning that we have a soul? Doesn't make a difference on what level of the soul might be. Because what do we understand levels of the soul anyway? After that, it's giving you levels of the soul. What do you don't know what the soul is, you understand the levels of the soul. But even if Kabbalah, I have a very low levels of my soul, because it came through all these worlds, and ultimately where it came in our body, it's extremely low voltage, as I always say that word, extremely low in its level, but this still connected to God, still connected to the essence of God. So therefore, it's extremely powerful. Even in the way ultimately it comes into this body, it's extremely powerful because it's connected to its essence. And this soul that's connected to its essence is Tahoidahi. That's what we say expression Adami. The soul that you put into me is pure. Ata barasa yet yitzarta the fact that you brought all about, you did it. And therefore you, God, my parents might have given me my body, my character, my feelings, but you gave me my soul. And if you gave me my soul, I have the capability of going beyond what my parents have given me. I have the capability of taking everything my parents have given me and making it better. And that's why the Gemara says parents are not hurt, are not jealous of the children. So parents that have righteous children are happy. Baruch Hashem, more righteous than them, more successful than them, more happy than them, etc. Right? Because the parents want that. Parents wanted that. Every parent wanted that the child should connect to the soul that's greater than them. Today is the 24th day of the month, my friends, which is chapter 113 to 119, which is actually the Hallel. And now we're going to say Hallel today. Counting today, we're going to say Hallel for 9 days, because counting today we say Hallel in Tillim, and tomorrow we're going to say Hallel in davening. So if you do those chapters 113 to 118, you do the hitas of the day. I want to wish you a wonderful, beautiful, happy day, a happy Hanukkah. Mitchum, I hope to see you all at 10 o'clock. We'll learn some more Chassidus, and we'll see you, Mitchum. Also today we're having a great program outside. It's not going to rain. And 2:30, Be'ezat Hashem, we're having a grand Hanukkah celebration. And the Mitchum will surely see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll continue the chitas of the day.